When I completed the trail in 2019, I left feeling pretty fit, but it didn't take long before noticing a problem that I had, specifically with my knees and my feet, that got worse and worse through into November, and I'm still feeling the ramifications of all that. Here it is in January of 2020. So I thought I'd make a video on health in regards to hiking a through hike. And we'll get to my particular problems later, but I guess the first thing that anybody should be taking care of is the fact that they have a healthcare plan of some kind. Now, I know in the US there are a lot of issues with healthcare plans and stuff like that going on, debates. But if you're a foreigner like myself coming to the country, you can purchase a healthcare plan while you're down there doing the through hike. And as I think I mentioned in another video, I did have the occasion at one point to use the healthcare plan, so it was useful to have had it. It cost me more than I spent on items while I was ill, but I did get refunded for that, so that I guess is what it is. Anyway, other things you might be concerned about, or should be concerned about if you take prescription medicine, that you might want to go to your doctor and try to get a prescription for a whole 6 months. That way you don't have to worry about having to get it refilled along the way. Well, as a foreigner, I mean, unless you have a doctor who has rights to write prescriptions in different states, in the US, you can't do it anyway, so you're going to have to bring them with you. And if you aren't bringing them with you into the country, then you better bring a letter from your doctor indicating why you have all that medication, because it might be quite a bit potentially, and it might be the type of medication that if the police were to catch you with, they might want to charge you with trafficking or something like that. So also, if you don't want to carry it with you the entire way, you could always take portion of it and send it off to you up ahead, maybe a month or two, and just pick it up as you go along and keep balancing a box. Well, as for non-prescription type medicines, I guess you could carry with you things like aspirin, inflammatory medications like ibuprofen. There's also ibuprofen PM, which I used a few times. That would help you get a solid night's sleep if you're having a bit of a problem with that. Sometimes with all the noise going on around you, or snoring, the case may be, depending on where you are. Also, things like Sinutab, something I carried with me, because every now and then, at least one time during the year, either in the spring or the fall, I'll have that kind of sinus build up, and my eyeballs will feel like they're being pressed out from behind, and I get a bit of a headache. It'll be very low level kind of pain, but it will be kind of aggravating for a while, until I finally catch on. Oh, that, it's my sinuses, so I'll take that. Also, allergy medicine, that type of thing. One other medicine that I also carried with me that I needed was diarrhea medication to kind of stop the flow, as it were. If you are on the trail and maybe a couple days away from town, you get diarrhea. Well, it can be problematic in that you're going to need a lot of water while you're walking, because you're going to be expelling a lot of water, and you do not want to become dehydrated. And also the fact that, when the feeling hits, you've got to act quickly. So anyway, I used the medicine only that one time, as I recall, but I knew other people who, because of the water they were drinking, as soon as they began to feel anything, they always took one of the pills just to ward off any potential issues. And of course, you've got your own first aid kit. And it probably doesn't contain a lot. I mean, I think I just had some Band-Aids. I don't think I had much of anything else, other than maybe for blister cures. I had some kind of KT tape, a brand of an adhesive bandage that you can apply to your skin, typically for athletics. But the great thing about it is that it really hangs on. It doesn't really hurt when you take it off ultimately, and it provides that protection, that that moleskin that you may have used in the past that always came off in your sock or something like that. This stuff tends to stick a lot better, and so I would have a few strips of that as well. And just as a good utility, if you didn't carry a knife, to carry a small pair of scissors, which would be useful. I'll actually even carry them anyway if you've got to cut some blistery skin off, or you want to cut that tape to apply to different parts of your body, then I found that to be a useful thing to carry, and it was so small and light that that and tweezers. I was worried about encountering a tick of some kind and having to pull it out myself. I never came upon a tick, and barring the idea that I might have encountered the problem and have Lyme disease, and it just hasn't hit me yet. Well, you never know. But that is a distinct problem, because if you look at a map, a heat map of where ticks are in the United States, you find that, especially toward the northern half of the trail, there are a lot. Always wearing clothes with permethrin impregnated into it, an insect repellent, long sleeves, long pants, maybe even elastic bands to tuck the pant legs closed so they couldn't crawl up them. It was a good idea. Anyway, Lyme disease is no joke, and it's the type of thing that can affect different people differently, so it's very hard to diagnose. And if you are bit in an area of your body that you don't normally have access to looking at, you won't see that little bullseye type of wound that you'll get, I think, a day after you're being bitten. So yeah, check yourself every evening on your legs and your arms, and maybe have a friend check if you have one laying around. Now, the part of your body that's probably going to experience the real pain of the trip are your feet. First of all, I guess there are blisters, and there are a couple ways to help prevent getting blisters. One would be to have a pair of those Injinji socks, the type with the little toes that you pull over top of your toes. Very awkward the first one or two times you use it, but after that it's a lot easier, and it prevents blisters between toes. I didn't have that particular problem. I did a kind of double sock lining, and I did get a blister in my heel, but that's because I had done something to help try to prevent a different problem because of the new boots I got, and I got blisters in my heels, but that was the only time I ever got them. I do recall one fellow mentioning a particular item you could buy at a pharmacy that kind of created a water barrier over top of blisters. You'd apply it, and that would keep it from drying out, and bandage the blisters. I wish I knew more about that, but there are products like that out there. Otherwise, I just use stuff like that KT tape, athletic tape even, not moleskin, because I've never really ever had any luck with that type of stuff sticking, and either using a sock like Injinji or a double socking. Something I didn't encounter, but certainly the people the year before me did, when they had rain. I think it was like 28 days in a row or something like that, where it was wet at some point. I mean, I may have had a couple days in a row, but I never encountered something called trench foot. And if you've ever seen photographs of it, it's where the skin on the bottom of your feet, because they're wet all the time, they almost like they're soaking up the water, and they're just all enlarged and soft and squishy, and so keeping your feet dry would be pretty important. I found also that it was a problem really up toward the north where I encountered it, but I kind of stopped taking off my socks in the evening. I was just tired. I just lay down in the quilt and go to sleep when it got to the shelter, and after eating and that type of thing. And I kept my clothes on, and that was it. The clothes I was wearing and the clothes I wore tomorrow. And my socks, I found one day when I was going down a hill, I had a lot of friction on the top of my feet, and it was kind of weird. And when I pulled my socks off, they were almost like stuck to my feet, and I couldn't understand why. And I mentioned to a fellow who ran a hostel up near the northern end. I wish I could remember his name. I mentioned it in my videos, but he told me he had learned through being in the military, the Marines I think it was, that you have to take your socks off every night and dry your feet, because even if they're just a little bit damp, the salt crystals will start to adhere between the skin and the sock, and then cause friction, and then you've got the problem I had, which was a little, not quite blisters on the top of my feet, but a friction burn, let's put it that way. So from that point on, I always took my socks off at the end of the day, and I wore socks to keep my feet warm that I had specifically for that purpose. and made sure that my feet were dry. And one way to dry them, other than wiping them with a towel or something like that, if you have anything, would be to apply some Purell or other brand of sanitizer. You wipe that on your feet. The alcohol evaporates very quickly, and it will also dry your feet. Now, as you're walking on the trail, especially through the summertime, I mean, you're going up and down, up and down. The whole AT is up and down, very few flat areas, and you are sweating. And as I found in one particular hill when I was going up, I was just so weak and tired. And it's only once I realized that, hey, maybe I should put some electrolytes in my water. And 10 minutes later, I was bopping up the hill like nothing had happened. So yeah, electrolyte, magnesium and potassium, I think, are the two main minerals that are lacking when you're sweating them out and need to be replenished. So take electrolytes every day, at least one bottle. I tended to have multiple bottles through the day. And the fact that it has a flavor also entices you to want to drink more, because I remember early on I might walk a couple of hours and I maybe not drink even half a liter of water. And dehydration will affect your muscles. Other problems like kidney stones and cramping, things like that. So force yourself to drink every 30 minutes, even a few gulps, just to keep your body hydrated. Now, when you're on the trail, one of the things that can happen is that you can fall down and go boom. And I recall, I think it was a day before I got to Damascus. I was walking along at a very quick pace, 2.5 to 3 miles an hour. And the grass was a little bit tall next to the path. The path wasn't very wide, and I had my hiking pole walking along. And somehow my hiking pole, as I kind of allowing it to go forward, kind of got caught in the grass. It didn't really move forward, and then my right foot kind of hit the pole and kind of tripped on it. And for whatever reason, you think that you're falling forward, you just stick your hands out and hit the ground. Well, it happened so fast, I don't know, maybe because I had a 30-pound pack on my back, but the whole momentum, I just went poof forward and didn't have my hands out to protect me at all. And I remember when I was going down and looking at that dirt, thankfully it was dirt, there was a flat rock right in the ground at surface level, and my head hit it right on, and I heard the sound crack, and I was sure that I had potentially cracked my skull, because it was a distinctive noise. And I didn't have anyone around me. The last people I'd seen was like half an hour before they were taking a break. And I pulled up my phone and put it on selfie mode, and I was taking photos or video and moving around my head, and then looking at it, and I saw that I had all these abrasions here, and I had a cut here, and yeah, so falling down is something that is probably going to happen to everybody on the trail. I remember meeting a fellow and talking about this particular experience, and he said, oh yeah, well, he walked the whole trail the year before. He was doing a session hike at that time I met him. And he said that he fell about 7 times or something like that. And that's just, that's a fact of getting older, that you lose your balance. So I thought, well, I don't think I feel that old. And hey, I just fell once, so I'm not thinking too much about that. But as it happened, as you walk along the trail, things happen. The rocks are slippery and wet. I'm sure a couple times I fell toward my back, and thankfully the pack was behind me, and it absorbed all the impact. I remember one time slipping on something and kind of falling forward, and landed with my knees, but off the side of the trail, and thankfully it was all mossy. And I remember another time I'm going downhill, and there are all these big boulders that had been cut to create almost like a walkway, stairway. But these were big rocks, and I remember slipping, and I fell, but off to the side of the trail, and again landed kind of on my back. So again, my pack protected me, thankfully, more than once. And I didn't have any damage, but it prevented me from having damage. I didn't encounter any other real physical problem from falling, but the risk is very great. There are points when you're on the trail and you are looking down at more than you can imagine. Oh, not quite vertical, but almost vertical, with nothing but big rocks and slick rocks, and it's damp, and my God, you got a pack on your back and you got these trekking poles and you're feeling your way down and moving very slowly, especially when you get to the weights. So falling is a potential problem for sure. And I must admit that after that first fall, where I landed on my face, I kept thinking, probably through most of the trek, and especially when I was in Pennsylvania, that had I fallen in a place like Pennsylvania, I mean, there are nothing but these rocks that are all jagged, pointing up at you on the edge and stuff like that, and they're just waiting for you to fall, so they'll crack your tailbone and split your skull open. I knew one other woman that I met at the top of Georgia Hostel. She had fallen, she had cracked one of her shoulder blades and had to leave the trail for 2 or 3 weeks before she'd get back and carry any kind of weight on her shoulder. I think she did some slack packing for the first while. But it happens. I mean, people leave the trail. Only about 25% of the people who start make it to the end. A lot of them might leave because budget, things are happening with their family off the trail, work problems, and illness. Sarge, a guy I walked with for a while, he had a knee that began to kind of swell, and he just had to stop walking for a few days, and he went back to New York, and doctor told him to take a week or two off, and he was going to go back on the trail, but something else came into his life that was, a positive thing, and he decided to stay in New York and going to do the trail, hopefully again in 2020. And Rufus, he banged his knee 2 or 3 times, and he was not having fun. And I think after that last time, that's what got him off the trail. I mean, people are falling like flies at some point, it feels like, and you kind of wonder, well, when is it going to be your turn? Something's going to happen. So, yeah, falling. One thing that near and dear to me, because of the problem I've had since leaving the trail, is knee pain. It really only happened as we're going through Pennsylvania. When you're going downhill, even though I had trekking poles, and I'm putting a lot of weight on those trekking poles to soften each step I take down, like half the trail is impact, and I for sure knew other people were having knee problems as well. He had his back near Irwin, and this is a lot further on, but yeah, a number of people complained about that. For the rest of the trip, they would talk about how their knees were, in agony of some kind or other. And I remember having that problem. You feel stiff when you get up in the morning, but within, half an hour, you're off on the trail again. At least I was with my daily routine. And it would take maybe 5-10 minutes to get kind of settled in and all lubricated in the beginning, but it was more like 15-20 minutes toward the northern end. And it was the type of thing where I knew I was having a problem because my knees almost felt like they were not stepping correctly, almost like, when they're expanding when you're about to step down, it felt like they were almost overextending in a way. And I had to be very conscious of that because I didn't want to overextend a knee and cause a problem. Now, after I got back, I found that my knees were becoming, it wasn't painful, through the course of the day or sitting or something like that. But when I would go to walk down the stairs, I would have to walk down one step at a time. And, I'm over 60 now, but I never had this problem before the trail for sure. And it was a distinctive and definite pain problem walking down a flight of stairs. And then after about a month, it got worse and worse. And then after about a month, I had noticed a bit of pain even going up the stairs. And I made an appointment with my doctor. Unfortunately, she decided to leave her practice that month and was not taking new appointments. And so the medical profession is here in Canada. May have free health or healthcare, and free as you might think of it. Finding a family doctor is a bit of a problem, especially with the baby boom, all getting older and needing more and more medical attention. So I didn't see anyone there, but I did through YouTube and self-analysis, something you probably shouldn't be depending on because, hey, I'm not a doctor, I just pretend to be. I found that the problem was probably cartilage that was, between my bones. So I started taking a collagen supplement to throw it in my smoothies through the day, or bone broth was another thing. I guess it was another term for stock pot with beef bones or turkey or chicken bones in there. and you're kind of making a soup. And it becomes very gelatinous when it cools down, and that's a sign that you've got collagen. And I guess they say, drink a cup or so of that every day, and I was drinking probably more than a cup. And now when I feel my nails, I can feel here, and then as I drag forward, I can feel kind of almost like a drop, where the ends of the nails is thinner than at the cuticle now. And I believe it also affects your hair. I think I saw one video that said that it might help your hair grow back. I don't know if that's really going to happen, maybe even add color. But so collagen supplements and bone broth, that type of thing. I'm taking it now and will continue to take it for a while, and I wish I had known about that, because I probably would have taken some collagen supplement while I was on the trail. They do have a bar, I don't have it here with me right at the moment, but a bar that contains collagen as well, kind of like a fruit bar type of thing, a Laura bar, that type of deal. And it would have been a preventative medicine type of thing to help repair issues along the way. I don't know if younger people had that particular problem. I can imagine they probably would be. Everything's thicker and stronger and more resilient. But us older folks, 50 and older, we're going to have that kind of a problem. So collagen, take it from me. Now, I suppose there are a few things that you could consider prevention, things that you can take care of before it becomes a problem. And so when you have a problem, or your ankle or your knee or elbow, whatever might be the problem, take care of it right now, because if that gets any worse, that's the type of thing that will take you off the trail, and then, you're off the trail for a week or two, you come back, like one fellow I knew, he ended up being a whole month behind his friends, and he was going to try to catch up to them, but he had lost his trail legs, so he couldn't do the miles that they could do or he could do before he left the trail, and he wasn't really catching up, and I think he kept with it for another month or so, and then he just quit the trail. He just felt like if he wasn't traveling with his friends and hadn't done the whole trail, it wasn't worth doing the trail at all. So everyone has their own reason for why they don't finish, and that was it. He just had enough. Okay, so like I was saying, you've got a problem, take care of it. If you have to stay in a hostel or a hotel for a few days or get off the trail for a week, do it, because if you just keep going, a fellow I knew with shin splints, he kept going, and it got so bad he had to leave the trail, and he left the trail for 3 or 4 weeks. Now, as the case might be, he was a lot younger and he was going a lot faster, and he ended up catching up to me again and passed me. So it can be done, but why make something worse than it is? If it's not worth taking a day or two extra just to get, just to feel better. I had the problem where my right leg had swollen up. It was in the front of the muscles. I think I had caught my toe as I was walking over some rocks, and I just pulled it further than it normally would have been stretched. And I became irritated. And the next day, it bothered me. But I kept walking. And on the day after that, I didn't have any effect at all. And the third day, it came back. By the fourth day, it was really kind of bad. And by the fifth day, I was limping. And I decided, because I was in a restaurant right next to a motel, I'm going to the motel, I'm not going to continue on. And I stayed at that motel, I think it was just 2 days, but I was icing my leg all the time, applying a compressed bandage on it, just trying to do anything to get the swelling down, because it was going to stop me. It was the one time I was really afraid that my trail was over. And I didn't know what it was, so that's why I didn't stop earlier. Plus I wasn't in a town, so I couldn't have gotten ice and that type of thing, or compresses. But once I encountered that, I did. Now I did walk while it was maybe a bit of a problem, so it's one thing to give advice, it's another thing to take it. And I probably would have been better off had I taken an extra couple of days off, rather than just kind of suffer with that bandage on. Even when I took the elastic bandage off finally, the impression of the elastic bandage, kind of like my skin was kind of like wavy for a week before it finally all kind of settled out. And thankfully the problem went away and it never did come back. I suppose the way to think of the trail is that it's a marathon, not a race. So if you have to pull into the pits and get an engine rebuilt or something like that before you can get back out there, that's what you have to do. You just have to have, I guess, the financial means to be able to afford a hostel or a hotel for a number of days, or maybe you're going to have to go home and come back after a week or two and then continue. But I just don't give up the fight. Well, one thing I learned once I got back when listening to a podcast, they were talking about taking ibuprofen. And this particular fellow who runs almost like a marathon every day was taking ibuprofen every day. And after a while, his pains just were not going away. And so he stopped. I think he had heard a podcast where they were talking about ibuprofen as well. And so he stopped taking ibuprofen. And I think within a day or two, all the pain went away. Also, I believe it's not so great for your kidneys. So if you don't want to have kidney problems when you get older, or you already have kidney problems, I would limit the use of ibuprofen, maybe once every couple days rather than every day. And I was taking at one point. Thankfully, I did stop after listening to that podcast because I didn't want a particular problem. I only took it when I felt I needed it rather than as a preventative type of thing. Well, one of the things you do when you're on the trail is you bump fists. You don't shake your hand with somebody else because that's when the germs get transferred. And you don't know, that person went to the bathroom in the woods or in the outhouse and you don't know what they touched or if they used antiseptic or what. So definitely bump fists. Also, use Purell every time you go to the bathroom, even if you don't think you touched anything, and probably before you eat dinner. Now, I had a thing once, this is getting toward the north. I mean, I'm losing like 10 pounds a week, which I thought was great because I was 220, just about 6'1". So in my mind, at least overweight. Other people might not think that's overweight, but I did. And it was the type of thing though where I noticed that, it wasn't just belly fat leaving. I'd take that monthly photograph in the mirror at a hostel and I would notice all this muscle definition in my chest and the shoulders. And just whittling away, and there was nothing like bone there. And I remember there were a couple days where I smelled like an ammonia smell as I'm walking. And I mentioned to somebody, and they said, "Oh, that's a good thing, because that means you're burning fat." I thought, oh, great, I'm burning fat. And then I was in a hostel, and this was right before entering the Whites. And a fellow who was there was just talking about this type of thing. Nothing I had brought up, and I just happened to be sitting there eating something and listening. And he said that when you smell ammonia, correct me if I'm wrong, but he said that it was a very dangerous thing because it meant that you were burning your protein. And, it's not just muscles in your arms and shoulders and back or wherever, it's also heart. So it's a very serious problem, and it means you need to take more protein. So from that point on, I was eating a lot more peanuts. I would definitely have tuna every day. And peanut butter, a big slab of peanut butter on a burrito every day at lunchtime. So don't let that become a problem for you. Eat a lot of protein. You're not just going to lose body fat, but you're going to be losing body mass, which means your muscle mass. And a lot of people can't afford that. So protein. Oh, one of the mental aspects of being on the trail, I felt, it was after Virginia. I guess people talk about the Virginia blues. I didn't have the blues in Virginia. It was after Virginia where I began to kind of have, why am I out here? Why am I doing this? I'm not having any fun, that type of thing. I mean, there were no views most of the time. You're going up and down those hills, you're sweating. I wasn't in per se any trail family at the time. There was one kind of tramily that was around me every now and then, and I kind of hung out with them, but I wasn't really part of the tramily. And I guess having a positive attitude, or I knew that if I had a goal, the one fellow I knew who, his wife had passed away the year before from cancer, and so his goal was to do the trail, in her memory. And that was what really drove him. And frankly, I didn't have any drive. So having a goal or having a reason for wanting to complete the trail beyond just wanting to complete it would be helpful to have. And I guess that's a mental health aspect of the trail. And hand in hand with that was the idea of going to a hostel regularly or a hotel and taking day or two off. No, I usually ended up taking multiple days off, 2 or 3 days, because I was uploading videos all the time, and often the internet was really poor wherever I was, and it would just take hours to upload one little video, and I would be backlogged 12 videos, so I was pretty determined to get them off my phone and onto the internet. Now, had it not been for that, it would have been maybe a lot more enjoyable, because then I'd be able to get out of the hotel or hostel and go for a walk and see things and, hang around other people more. So I would say to you, take the time to really enjoy the people you're hiking around. I mean, not just at shelters or campsites, but when you get to hostels and hotels, take an extra day off every couple of weeks. I mean, it becomes work. Frankly, people say, don't turn the trail into work. Well, almost everyone I spoke to felt like it was work. They woke up in the morning and they went to work, and work was walk. And at the end of the work day, they stopped, they ate, and then they went to bed. And then they woke up the next morning and began it all again. So take a bit of time off, enjoy the towns you go to. Don't try to hurry through the trail if you're not trying to do some kind of record. It is a pleasure, and don't turn it into something that's not a pleasure. For sure, the last month, I try to make every day count. I try to, feel like, yeah, I'm on the trail. I'm on the Appalachian Trail. I'm enjoying this walk. It's a beautiful sunny day. Look at these sights. I mean, Maine was my favorite state. The hills had beautiful views, and the climb up and down were not really super steep like they were back in Pennsylvania or New Hampshire. And unlike down in the south, where you would go up a hill, spend an hour and a half to get up there, and then you're immediately starting to go down, and there was no viewpoint at all. And it's like, well, why are we walking this trail? And every state has their own group of people managing the AT, and they all have their own attitude about what the AT should be like. So enjoy the views when you finally get them in the north. They will come back, and it was, again, a mental health aspect for me, because it totally changed my attitude from that, why am I doing this, to this is beautiful, I really am happy I'm here now. Anyway, so that's all I can think of in respect to health. I mean, you're going to see videos of people with their first aid kits and that type of thing. I tried to cover all the things I think I encountered for myself and for other people along the way, and why it's not just a physical thing but a mental thing too. And anyway, I hope you get something from that and enjoy your hike, because it's a big one, and it'd be pretty memorable, because every now and then I think about the trail, or look at some photos and I go, oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. It's something I'm going to cherish for a long, long time. Bye-bye.